In 1963 in England, Alan Price had a little group that he called the Alan Price Rhythm and Blues Combo. But he decided that they need a singer. And boy, did he ever find one. Between 1964 and 1966, this new band had huge successes. So, are you ready to go to New Orleans by way of England and check out that House of the Rising Sun? Yeah, we're talking about the Animals. Let's drop the needle. The original members of the band were Alan Price on keyboards, Chas Chandler on bass, Hilton Valentine on guitar, John Steele on drums, and the singer was Eric Burton. So the group, the Alan Price Rhythm and Blues Combo, changed their name to the Animals. And one story has it that they became the Animals because of their wild stage act, that they were animals on stage. But Eric Burton has always disputed that fact. Regardless, the Animals they became. And their first single was a remake of the song Baby Let Me Take You Down, which they retitled to Baby Let Me Take You Home. The Animals went on tour with Chuck Berry, and they decided that they wanted a different song for closing their act. Most bands at that time, the last song in their act would be kind of a rousing rock and roll number, and the Animals wanted something different. So they took an old traditional folk song that had actually been recorded by Bob Dylan not long ago on his first album, and the Animals did their version of the House of the Rising Sun. The arrangement for House of the Rising Suns that the Animals came on is distinctive, and once you hear it, you really can't forget it. You've got Alan Price playing that weird little organ riff, and you got the soulful wailings of Eric Burton. Now, the single came out over 4 minutes long, which was considered way too long for radio, and in the US when it was released, they did an edited version which brought it down to just under 3 minutes. Nonetheless, it was a hit, and as a result, it was time for an album. But just like the Beatles albums in those early days, when the Animals album came out, there was 2 covers and there were 2 different albums, one for the US and one for the UK. The US version was released first. The UK album came out a month later. The House of the Rising Sun is on the US version, but not on the UK. And the US also contains the earlier single, Baby Let Me Take You Home. The UK version does not. Both versions have The Girl Can't Help It and Chuck Berry's Round and Round and Memphis, Tennessee. In the fall of 1964, the Animals played the Ed Sullivan Show. And just like when the Beatles were there were all these shrieking and screaming girls in the audience. At the year's end, they star in a movie, Get Yourself a College Girl, where they sing Around and Around. At the start of 1965, the second Animals album is released in the US, but not in the UK, and it's called Animals on Tour. But this is a deceptive title because it's not a live album. It's really just a bunch of the outtakes from the UK album that had not been released in the States previously. I like Boom Boom, Let the Good Times Roll, I'm Crying, Bright Lights Big City, and She Said Yeah. Then the Animals had a number of hit singles. And you're probably thinking that when the next album comes out, those singles will be on it. And you're right, if you live in the US and you buy the US album, because when the album comes out in the UK, those singles are not on it. But changes are afoot for the Animals. Alan Price decides to quit because he has a fear of flying, and he doesn't rejoin the group until 1977. In 1966, the next Animals album is released, and not only are the albums different between the US and the UK, they have different titles. In the US, it's called Animalization, and in the UK, it's called Animalisms. The US version includes the hits Don't Bring Me Down, CC Rider, and Sweet Little 16. I also like I Put a Spell on You. The UK version is different. And of the above-mentioned songs, only Sweet Little 16 and I Put a Spell on You are featured on it. But after this record, the band breaks up. Now, Chas Chandler, the bass player, goes on to have an amazing career as the manager for Jimi Hendrix. And Eric Burton decides to record a solo album called Eric Is Here, which the label actually credits as Eric Is Here, Eric Burton and the Animals, but none of the Animals play on it. In fact, it's an orchestra playing with Eric. Then Eric Burton decides to form a new band around him, and they're called Eric Burton and the Animals, or sometimes they're referred to as Eric Burton and the New Animals. And they put out an album called Winds of Change. By this time, Eric has relocated to San Francisco, and this album reflects that. It is a psychedelic record. In fact, side one is mainly just Eric reciting poetry over some sparse instrumentation. And then side two has more of the rockers, pretty much in a Jimi Hendrix vein. Tracks include a cover of the Stones' Paint It Black, an answer to Hendrix with Yes, I Am Experienced, and then my favorite song on the album, San Franciscan Nights. In 1968, they released a follow-up album called The Twain Shall Meet, and I really like this album. One song is called Monterey, and it's really kind of a love song to the Monterey Pop Festival and also to Monterey and the area around that. And then another great song on the album is a Vietnam War protest song called Sky Pilot. And when I was a disc jockey on the radio in LA, I played that song a lot. That same year, they released another album called Every One of Us. Tracks include White Houses, Year of the Guru, and an almost 19-minute epic, New York 1963, America 1968. After this album is released, this version of the Animals break up. But then the label decides to release a double live album called Love Is. And interestingly enough, playing guitar on this album is Andy Summers, who would then later go on to join the Police. I like River Deep Mountain High, Ring of Fire, the almost 10-minute version of the Traffic song Colored Rain, and the closer, which takes up all of side 4, Gemini the Madman. Eric Burton went on then to join up with a group in San Francisco called War, and it was Eric Burton and War, and they recorded a number of records together. Then in 1977, the original lineup decides to regroup, and they record an album called Before We Were So Rudely Interrupted. Now, the critics really liked this record, but the record label didn't really promote it, saying that they thought the style of the music that the Animals were making wasn't really popular at the time, and as a result, it didn't really sell. Nonetheless, I like It's All Over Now, Baby Blue, Please Send Me Someone to Love, and Lonely Avenue. 6 years later, in 1983, they decide to try it again. They regroup and record an album called Arc. Check out the tracks Love Is For All Time, Prisoner of the Light, Hard Times, The Night, and No John No. Then in 1994, finally the Animals are inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Eric Burton did not attend, and the band did not perform. And 2 years later, in 1966, sadly, Chas Chandler dies, ending any chance of the original Animals regrouping yet again. Now, as usual, I've created a Spotify playlist, and here's the link, and I'll also put it in the comments down below. And so you can go check that out and listen to some of the music of the Animals that we've just been talking about. Over the years, there's been many different incarnations of the Animals, but in my mind, the Animals were always the best between the years 1964 and 66 with that original lineup. They just put out some great songs. And I keep thinking about songs like Don't Let Me Be Misunderstood and, of course, House of the Rising Sun. Well, thanks for watching, and until next time, keep it rocking. If you liked this episode, hit the like button, and you can also leave me a comment down below, and I'll respond to you. If you subscribe, we'll let you know when future episodes come out.